Hello everybody, this is a special session for our Standards Committee forum. So it's aimed at anybody who's in the Standards Committee of buildingSMART to give you a more thorough update on the activities and the process, possibly something for you to dip into. If there is people that wish to make comments in the chat, then please do so, and maybe get a bit of a conversation going. I wanted to start actually just by reminding everybody of the scale of the operation of buildingSMART now. We have representatives from all of these international members, a very diverse group, all large companies with big portfolios in their own right, but also spanning the entire value chain and supply chain of the built asset industry. And we also have member representatives from our chapter community, and you can see them represented here. Again, very international, worldwide, and with significant contributors from each of these regions. Now, the Standards Committee is made up of representatives from all of our chapters and all of our members. And here's a list of everybody that's on the Standards Committee. We don't meet as a group except at summits. We don't have regular monthly meetings for all these people to get together. And I'll explain a little bit more shortly about how we do manage that. But when it comes for voting, these are the people that we send out the voting emails to, and these are the people that respond and acquiesce whether they've endorsed whether the activity itself is following the buildingSMART process. The Standards Committee doesn't actually vote on the technical merits of a new solution or a new standard. That's addressed, the technical assurance is addressed within the project and by the Standards Committee technical executive. And the Standards Committee makes different assessments depending on whether they're being asked to endorse a standard or a technical report. And again, I will explain more about that as we go through this session today. I want to introduce some people to you. buildingSMART International has a small core team of professionals that includes people like, well, of course, it includes our Chief Executive, Richard Petrie. It includes Aidan Mercer, our Marketing Director. It includes Leon von Berlo, our Technical Director, myself as the Operations Director, and other supporting people, Dan Little, who's our Events Manager, and our International Project Coordinators. The International Project Coordinators are on the screen at the moment, and they, well, Laura Tam, who looks after the airport room and the construction room and the new sustainability energy management room. John Proctor, who looks after the building room, the infrastructure room and the product room. Sheila Karai-Lung, who looks after the regulatory room and the railway room. And Jeffrey Ouellette, who's on a contract basis, and he looks after the technical room. And there also is Claire Whitaker, our finance manager, who looks after the project finances as well as the operational finances of buildingSMART International organisation. Each of these people, obviously, like all of us, we all have different roles to do within the organisation, but their function for the rooms is to assist with the activity proposals and the detailed project plans, make sure that the schedules coordinate with the buildingSMART International process, and support the contracts that we set in place with both the sponsors of projects and also with the project delivery teams. And they schedule meetings and they support with documents and updates. The community governance and the international consensus of buildingSMART is important. That's what gives us our credibility for the development of new standards to support the open digital aspirations of a planet, really. The buildingSMART process organisation levels look like this. So at the top of the organisation is the Standards Committee, that's yourselves. As I said, you can't meet regularly on a monthly basis. So we have the Standards Committee executive who meet monthly on your behalf. And they are the people that endorse whether an activity proposal or a project plan is fit to come through to the Standards Committee for voting. They in turn are supported by the Standards Committee Technical Executive, and I will talk a little bit more about what their responsibilities are later. On the left-hand side of the diagram, you see our specialist domains, which we call rooms, and each room is led by an executive committee, which we call a steering committee, and they are representatives, elected representatives from our membership team. The process itself goes through 3 stages of initiation, development, and approval, and the Standards Committee votes at various points in the process as it goes through the maturity phases till it finally comes out the other end as a buildingSMART standard. And again, I will show that in a different diagram shortly so that we can understand it better. So the Standards Committee has been called on in the last year on several occasions. Here is a list of the times that you were asked to vote, starting in January 2021, where we had a standard proposal for the creation of a buildingSMART International standard on JSON. We then asked you to endorse an activity proposal for the IFC airport project, airport entities. In March, there was a steering committee vote for the election of a new or an enhanced infrastructure room steering committee. A technical room project on open CDE documents was put forward to you in April. Occupant movement analysis standard proposal from the building room came through in May, as did an IDM MVD for steel construction, spatial zone requirements, and the IFC4 precast. The IFC4 precast was a production standard request. It was a final vote as to whether this should be published as a buildingSMART production standard. And we also had an activity proposal from the regulatory room. Now, May was a particularly busy month, and we don't necessarily plan it that way. With all the activities that we've got going on, they each have a different scope depending on what it is that they're delivering, and they have different milestones within that project scope. So it tends to work out that the spread is relatively even, but we cannot schedule the voting to be in particular months, because if we were to hold them for, say maybe voting every 3 months or end of every quarter, then some projects will be held for quite a long time. Meanwhile, the project contractors that we've got working on those projects would have to go off and find other jobs, and we might not get them back once the project was released again. But I'll tell you a bit more about the timing and the delivery of projects and the voting in a few slides' time. The other thing that we did was in July, you were asked to vote on a standards proposal for FM Open BIM, and that's progressed since. We'll maybe have a look at that shortly and see where that has got to. And we also had the IFC 4.3 extension deployment for infrastructure and railway room, or infrastructure and railway projects, which are combined. They were delivering the new IFC 4.3 production standard. When you are voting, we have a web page now. I'll just click on this and it should open up. It has opened up. It's opened up on the wrong screen. I'll move it across. So this web page, it gives you information on what it is that you've been asked to endorse. And you can see here that the last thing was on 9th of February, you were asked to endorse the IFC Spatial Zone Technical Report, and it indicates whether what the status is, whether it's been approved or whether it's out for review. When something has been approved, such as this one here, the FM Open BIM project has been reviewed and endorsed, you click on that, you can get more information. If you want to know what the results of the vote were, you can click here, on View Report, and it will give the information that you require. Just bear with me while I get back to my presentation. Okay. So the Standards and Solutions Programme is one of 3 core standards at buildingSMART International, and I always describe it as the factory where the standards are produced. The buildingSMART International community, as you know, is committed to enabling lifecycle information management for a better built asset environment. And the programme is established and designed to be the place where the international community collaborates. What holds everything together is the buildingSMART process. And the buildingSMART process is defined. It's defined in several documents on our website. This is a snapshot of the page. And if you go to the page, you'll be able to scroll down and see a summary of 5 steps of the buildingSMART process, starting with being able to submit an activity proposal. So if somebody in the community has a set of requirements, a use case that they wish to be resolved through open digital ways of working, they can submit an activity proposal, and that activity proposal will come through me to the relevant room steering committee, where it will be evaluated, and that's then the entrance point into the buildingSMART process. Within the process, we have several documents. There is the main body, and then there is an explanation of what the organisation is, the structure of the organisation, who the various executives are in the buildingSMART process. And then there is also an addendum explaining how the project management is controlled at buildingSMART, and it's we have a well-defined process for doing that. And there is also an addendum that explains what the standards committee responsibilities are. And that's worth knowing as well, but it essentially says that you're there to endorse that the process is being followed. The process looks like this. As I say, it starts off with capturing industry needs through activity proposals and feeding them into a relevant room. You, as the Standards Committee, would then be consulted on that activity proposal, which is in the initiation phase, and you would determine whether it is something that fits in with the buildingSMART remit and is something that you would like to endorse to go forwards. It will then be turned into a proper project plan, and you will then vote on it to say that the project plan is robust enough and is in accordance with what the process determines in terms of the project management plan that's in the addendum 3, as I described. The project then enters the solution creation phase, where it's developed and eventually approved. So this is where the project team are working to deliver the new standard, and you're consulted and you vote again at this stage here to assess whether you think it's fit to be a candidate standard. And a candidate standard is actually published on our website. The project team is engaging with software vendors then to do standards validation to ensure that when the standard goes through for final publication as a production standard, it's fit for purpose, it's been tested. So the final vote that you do is here, which is when international consensus has been achieved, when software validation has been achieved, and if it passes that vote, it gets published on our website as a production standard. This means that software vendors can now pick it up and use it, safe in the knowledge that it will be fine and ready for use. We then have a final stage called BSI Final Standard, which is when software implementation has taken place and it's been out in the market and tested. And of course, industry then adopts it, and so on and so forth. Looking at the BSI process in slightly more detail, this shows what happens, or what I've just described in more detail, really. The activity proposal you are consulted on, the detailed project plan, which will at that stage determine what the project deliverables are, what its milestones are, where the funding's coming from, who the project team is going to be. All those things are determined and its maturity level is classified as a standard proposal. So the detailed project plan is a standard proposal in terms of its maturity. You vote on that, and then it goes through this development and approval phase. And as I say, eventually it will be published as a production standard and eventually adopted as a BSI final standard. This also relates to the ISO standards, because we do have liaison people within our rooms for ISO, and we do advise ISO at the beginning of the standard proposal that work is about to take place in a new standard. Production standard can be broadly correlated to the ISO draft international standard phase, and the BSI final standard can be broadly correlated to the ISO standard phase, or maturity, I should say. So what I just showed you was for a new standard, but not everything we do, well, actually no, I've skipped ahead. This is the explanation of the time durations for voting. As I said earlier, we can't predetermine when a project will come through for voting, because it rather depends on the scope of that project and its milestones. But when it does come through for voting, there is an entrance gate for you to obtain it, and an exit gate. So the first thing that has to happen is the Standards Committee executive have to receive the proposal and determine whether it's good enough to come to you in the Standards Committee, because we don't want to waste anybody's time. So the Standards Committee executive meet once every month. So the review period there could be between 1 and 4 weeks. It then comes through to the Standards Committee for you to vote, and you have told us that you need sufficient time to be able to consult with your community, you know, whether it's in your organization, whether it's in your chapter. You need sufficient time to share the proposal with them in order to get their feedback before you vote. So at the early stage, when it's a standard proposal, you've asked for 4 weeks. At these later stages, you've asked for 12 weeks. So there is a preset determined time, and we send out the vote that says when the vote will close, and it's between 4 and 12 weeks, depending on the maturity of the maturity phase as it goes through the standard. And then the Standards Committee executive have to review the outcome of the vote, and again that could be between 1 and 4 weeks before we publish it on the Standards Committee consultation page that I showed you earlier with the results of the vote. So all the process is well established and in place. And this is the timeline for when it's a technical report that's being produced rather than a standard. A technical report, again, is delivered through the project vehicle, but it isn't as onerous in terms of the endorsement as a new standard. And you only get to see this twice. You will vote on it when it's a technical report proposal, and you need 4 weeks for doing this. While the team is working on the report and having final drafting and testing with the community, you don't necessarily get to see it, but then you will vote on it at the end to say that yes, it's had sufficient international consensus, and it will be a 12-week voting period. In the buildingSMART international process, we have determined several layers of definition in order to manage the scope of what we're doing more effectively. These are common definitions that I'm sharing here. And so a project is a unique and transient endeavour undertaken to achieve a desired outcome. So the project is, for example, creating a new standard. A programme is a group of related projects, which may include related business as usual activities that together achieve a beneficial change or strategic nature for an organisation. So the IFC 4.3 delivery was effectively a programme because it was made up of several projects from the infrastructure room and from the railway room. and collectively it produced a new IFC 4.3 standard. You could even argue that a room itself is a program, because it has a series of projects that are fulfilling a room's roadmap, achieving a room's destiny. And then a portfolio is a grouping of projects, programs, and other activities carried out under the sponsorship of an organisation. So everything that we do within buildingSMART is our portfolio, so we don't need to worry too much about that. The way that we divide up the rooms, or we organise the rooms, is shown here underneath the Solutions and Standards programme. You, as the Standards Committee, are supporting the Solutions and Standards programme, and the room steering committees are the executive bodies made up from our elected members, and they oversee the activity portfolio. They also oversee the creation of the room roadmap, the room 3-4 year plan for what is required from their particular domain. But in the activity portfolio, we have a project steering committee that oversees the various projects. And I've just shown 2 here, and each project starts with an activity proposal and then a project plan, and then it follows the process that I've shown you. The opportunities for our members are as follows. So all members get a vote on the Standards Committee. It's a major benefit of membership. The Room Steering Committee is elected from the members. The Project Steering Committee has representatives from the Room Steering Committee, but primarily from the project sponsors, the people who have put forward the funding to deliver particular projects because they have specific needs. And the projects are delivered through a combination of the people that proposed it and contractors, and those people will either be provided work in kind from the sponsoring organisation, or we will employ them using sponsorship money. And then we have this new forum now called the Industry Forum, which many of the rooms are adopting, which is where people who are interested in what a room is doing, but they're not on a steering committee and they're not in a project, but they want to come along and find out more, we hold industry forums for these people. So let's just reflect on some of the recent achievements, even though that is spelled wrong, I've just noticed. The big thing that's happened recently is the IFC 4.3 standard has been delivered. The IFC 4.3 standard has extended the IFC schema beyond the entities required for vertical assets, and delivered for those requirements that stretch across the landscape. So we can see here it's included bridges, roads, tunnel, ports and waterways, and railways. In actual fact, tunnel is still being delivered and will be coming to you later for endorsement, and that will be a new version of IFC. We've said much about IFC 4.3 during the last few days. I don't intend to dwell on it too much now because it's all been said before, but it has been a fantastic achievement. The production standard was endorsed by you back in October of last year, and so that has been published. We have now submitted to ISO, and it is going through the ISO process with a view that it will become an ISO standard sometime in early 2023. Obviously, the ISO process is beyond the control of buildingSMART International. We just feed the information in at the required time. But all the other aspects of producing it as a standard and some related MVDs have been produced. So it's a fantastic achievement. And other things that are being achieved and continue to be achieved are on this slide here. And we've already had presentations from the room leaders earlier on today and throughout the week from the project teams on each of these activities. Some of the activities are shared requirements between rooms. It's important to remember that room boundaries are porous. The executive committee for a room has a particular set of requirements in mind, but some of these activities, and here's an example, for example, the interoperability between BIM and GIS standards is important for airport room, infrastructure room, and railway room. And of course it is, because of the nature of their assets. The fire safety project, which is being run through the building room, was also of great interest to the airport community, and actually would also be of great interest to the tunnel community as well from infrastructure. So just making the point that the buildingSMART process allows for this shared requirements. So going back to this slide again, just to talk a little bit more about the organisation levels. We talked about the Standards Committee Executive and the fact they meet monthly and they review what comes through before they send it through to the Standards Committee. The Standards Committee Technical Executive, they also meet monthly. These are representatives of some of the best technical brains in the organisation, and they review the activity proposals before the Standards Committee Executive see it. And the reason they do that is because they are looking to harmonise the technical aspects of a proposal across different proposals, but also advise the Standards Committee Executive on the technical merits. The SCTE, to put them in their short form, they also review the project expert panel outputs. So as activities are going through their development process, they have to engage an expert panel from the community, and they don't have to be members actually on the expert panel, to review the work, to review the technical aspects of the work, and the SCTE review that work. They also review the technical deliverables and the quality of the software approval testing and that validation work that I explained. Which is obviously quite important to make sure that when a standard is finally released as a production standard, we can be sure it works and it's got the right quality assurance. Other things the SCTE have responsibility for is the candidate version release control. So when a standard is a candidate standard and it's published on our platforms, is what I'm looking for, published on our platforms, it's not the project that produced it that has the authority to review it and reissue it as a new release candidate. It has to be the Standards Committee Technical Executive that review it, and they give the authority to say that this standard can be reissued with a new version of the release standard. And the reason they do that is because they go through a process of continuous evaluation to ensure that there are no knock-on effects or other interoperability issues with that release. And the SCTE also own the IFC number release protocol. So it's the SCTE that determines whether something is going to be IFC 4.3, or in the case of tunnel standard, whether that's going to be the IFC 4.4. Or whether it's a major number release such as IFC 5. It's the SCTE that determine that, nobody else, and certainly not the projects. And then the other thing we make sure we keep an eye on is the key performance indicators regarding the rooms. A good room health check set a dashboard looks like this. Each of our rooms now, including the new Sustainability Energy Management room, has a good steering committee. They all have a charter and roadmap that's either in production or is already published. Most of them have industry supported projects. There's a couple that don't yet. Most of them have viable working groups which are looking at getting the next iteration of project through. And some of them now have industry forums, as I described earlier. And we update this all the time, and obviously be very happy when everything is either amber or green on there. We're doing continuous improvement. Delivering a project at buildingSMART is well determined in terms of how the project is engaged in terms of its governance. It's also now becoming even better defined about what they do. You know, what has to go through, what has to be delivered when a project is being produced. You know, in terms of, first of all, determining what the initial requirements are, then assessing whether those entities already exist in IFC, or whether they can best be presented by putting into the buildingSMART data dictionary, which, by the way, now has a route through into IFC because the buildingSMART data dictionary has been improved. And once that's been done, determining how the users of the standard can access to the entities they require, which traditionally has been an MVD, but the more modern approach is going to be through IDS. And then we have the whole thing then represented, all the entities represented, and people can use the standard. So it basically goes through that flow. What we now have is a flowchart that Leon Lomberlo has created, which determines the platforms that are used as well as the flow of information that has to be created. And this is being improved all the time, and we'll be looking to publish this more thoroughly in the near future. We do have support services. I've mentioned that the buildingSMART data dictionary has been improved. So more often than not, if somebody's looking to determine new entities to achieve open digital ways of working for a particular requirement, more often than not now it can be put into the buildingSMART data dictionary, and that is the best way of representing it. At the early stage of a project, which is about determining the requirements or a use case, we now have the use case management service, which is live and being used, and our project proposal teams are putting their use cases into this service, which is then open for the world to see and to assess whether it's a use case that fits their needs as well, whether they want to contribute to it. It's also a good way of other organisations to put their use cases in, and for our room steering committees to evaluate it and understand what the market really wants, because that can then help determine a room roadmap if they're able to see that there's a common theme emerging. So our activities, I will quickly go through these because they have been talked about, as I say, during the summit. But nonetheless, it's probably worth just having a quick look. So the Ifc Extension Deployment phases were from the railway room and the infrastructure room. These are now both complete. So we're showing here that the funding is fully committed and spent. Collectively, Infra and Rail have spent nearly €6 million on delivering the IFC 4.3 over several years. Tunnel also has a full amount of funding, and that will complete later this year. And the tunnel project is coming in at €446,000. The FM handover equipment maintenance project, really we need 300,000 to complete this. They've gone so far. A certain amount of funding has been achieved. We've had over 120 companies express an interest in this project and its outcomes, but not so many have come forward with funding as yet. So we continue to ask, we continue to pursue that, because we do really want to move this forward through now the development phase. The occupant movement analysis project has a good set of funding. We have 340,000. We've got more than half of that. There's a lot of pro bono and work in kind on this particular project, actually. And the facilities management and open BIM has done its first phase, which is creating 5 use case papers. We're publishing those next month, well, this month now, because it's April 1st today. And we're publishing these as 5 industry insight papers. So these are 5 expanded use cases, which will be the catalyst for further work. And to do that further work, we are looking for more funding. The Airport Entities Project has been largely delivered so far by work in kind from airport employees that are in our steering committee. We really want to progress that, and there's a call for participation and call for sponsorship out for that. Maritime Project, we're still waiting for the project plan. I'm particularly excited about this project because I think there's a whole sustainability agenda here regarding power generation, and I think it's going to be, it's going to attract a lot of interest and generate a lot of positive benefit, as all our projects do. But this one's looking at dams, hydroelectric, tidal and wave power, offshore wind turbines. So we're pursuing the project plan for that, and it'll be coming forward shortly. And this one here from the regulatory room again is receiving a lot of both pro bono and work in kind contribution at the moment. It has got some funding already, and we've even had some funding from some government agencies, which is nice to have. So progressing with that. And then the next rail project, which is about applying IFC 4.3, we're looking for 650,000 for that. Already we've received most of it, and the remainder we're fairly confident that we will receive in order to progress this. Obviously it's open to any other railway domain companies that want to contribute. Fire safety engineering is looking for, it's got a call for participation out at the moment, looking for 250,000. And here's a summary of what I've just talked about in one easy to access place. So in terms of what you're going to be asked to endorse next, coming up in April from our construction room, there's a cost and scheduling project. In May, we anticipate that the IDS information delivery specification proposal will be coming through to you. This is from our technical room, and as you heard me mention earlier, this is like the newer way of being able to access the entities that you might require if you are using any one of our standards. Maritime Project, we hope the proposal will come through in June. And then, as yet to be determined on the timeline, we've got from the building room the FM handover equipment, because we're actually looking for some more funding. From the infrastructure room, asset operations handover. That's only recently gone to the infrastructure room as a proposal, but they're super excited about it. And then the railway room applying IFC 4.3. So in other words, getting the IFC 4.3 really properly running in software. That'll be coming through to you shortly as well. And here's the link to that page I showed you earlier about the consultation. So that's a summary of what I wanted to share with you as the Standards Committee. I hope that's been helpful. I'm sorry we're not all together. It's very difficult just talking to a machine because I can't see if there's any questions coming in. But if I stop sharing now, then I should be able to see if there's been any questions. That's fine. No questions this time. We will do these Standard Committee forums more regularly from now on. We'll find better ways of doing them to get more interaction, and please feedback to us topics that you'd like us to cover, aspects of the process that you're not sure about perhaps, or particular projects that you might be interested in, or an aspect of the governance that you want more clarification on. We're always happy to have those conversations. I do a lot of onboarding of new members throughout the year, and people have always got questions questions that they want to come back to us on. I think it's also worth saying that actually you don't have to know too much about the governance of buildingSMART International. You just have to be assured that the process is there and it works. The reason we've got this core management team is for us to worry about that on your behalf, and help you to concentrate on doing the aspects of the work that you're best qualified for, or you have most passion for, or that you have a purpose for, which is delivering solutions for the built asset industry, and not have to worry about the small amount of bureaucracy that we have, just to make sure that things work well and with good quality. So from me, thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all well. Bye-bye.